This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's January 23rd, 2026. On this day in 1912, representatives of a dozen nations signed the first multinational agreement on drug enforcement. It was called the International Opium Convention. And that was the result of talks that had started several years before at the urging of U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. By the time that effort produced a document, he'd been replaced in the Oval Office by Taft. Now, the agreement basically established the framework for what a comprehensive drug control measure should look like. It defined the drugs that were most abused at the time, not just opium and morphine, but cocaine and heroin, both of which were new on the scene. The convention covered ways of restricting the manufacture of those drugs, clamping down on distribution, while still keeping the channels open for scientists and doctors to access them for research or clinical treatments. Nations agreed to track data, share information, and enact laws, of course, towards a shared goal. Well, they agreed in theory, anyway. The delegates in the room came up with a lot of good ideas, but selling the governments back home on the idea of co-signing the convention was another matter. Ratification was so slow that the only way it was completed was by having it baked into acceptance of the treaty that ended World War I, a full 7 years later. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Today, governments around the world are much more open to multinational agreements overall. There's more of a consensus about the role government has to play and how much access a community has to addictive substances, too. And an understanding that drug control is one of those issues that ignores borders. Add those elements together, and you get the current cluster of not one, not two, but 3 different international drug conventions that the U.S. is part of. There's a degree of that evolution in thinking and approach on a more local level, too. The drug that triggered cooperative efforts in Tennessee was methamphetamine. Unlike other drugs that had to be smuggled into the state, people could make meth at home. And by the late 90s, clandestine meth labs had become a real issue in many of the state's poorest towns and rural areas. Think Walter White from Breaking Bad, but with way less care or caution. These weren't science teachers carefully combining chemicals in a trailer they'd moved out into the desert out of caution. People desperate for a high were combining cold medicine with stuff like paint thinner, brake cleaner, and fertilizer in any space they could find. We called them meth labs, but lab was a really strong term. They were haphazard. The people making meth rarely took any precautions to deal with toxic fumes. Explosions were all too common. In fact, at one point, 1/3 of the patients at Vanderbilt Hospital's burn center had been injured in meth lab explosions. And all too many of them were children whose parents had blown things up while trying to produce their next fix. Not to mention everything meth does to people's bodies and behavior. Well, in 1999, leaders in a few counties in southeastern Middle Tennessee recognized that their communities were an epicenter of meth production. They were in a crisis, and their law enforcement agencies didn't have the tools to deal with it. They needed focused training. They needed specialized equipment. They needed a way to quickly call in colleagues to help. They started talking about cooperating on all of those fronts. And by the next year, 18 counties had jumped on board to form the South Tennessee Meth Task Force. The approach of joining forces made a difference, and it spread. The task force expanded multiple times, eventually covering all of Tennessee. They established a fleet of trucks outfitted to respond to meth labs with a saying printed on the side, "If you cook it, we will come." The group also developed the expertise and understanding that informed the creation of new state laws that made it a lot harder to make meth at home. And then, after a while, the problems shifted. Meth receded, while opioid addiction took its place as the most widespread drug problem in the state. So the organization is still around, but it's been renamed and refocused. Now it's called the Tennessee Deadly Drug Task Force. It may have started as a scrappy collaboration of can-do sheriffs, but now it's considered to be Tennessee's foremost drug intelligence and education agency. It still provides training for law enforcement agencies and operates a fleet of specialized vehicles. But the group is also in charge of educating the public at large about the dangerous substances that are circulating in the community. It plays a role in the way that government and medical providers share information. It runs the state's pill take-back program. And it's the group you contact if you've got a tip about some kind of drug-related problem going on. In just a few minutes, Nashville's Meharry owns Dry January USA. That's coming up after the newscast.
I like to say Nashvillager in the morning, this is Nashville in the afternoon. I'm Blake Farmer, the new host, and yes, WPLN's midday show is also a podcast, and we understand lunchtime listening may not be your thing, but that doesn't mean you have to sit out. You can listen wherever you get your podcast, like right here, or ask your smart speaker to play the latest episode of This is Nashville.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. There's no safe way to drive on ice. That was the message from the Tennessee Department of Transportation at a briefing yesterday about the upcoming winter storm. Crews have been treating roads in Nashville with salt and brine to reduce the impact of ice, and snowplows stand at the ready for this weekend's wintry weather. There will also be teams of TDOT employees in yellow trucks out and about this weekend, patrolling the interstates, ready to assist motorists. But officials stress that folks should avoid driving unless absolutely necessary until the roads are clear. And if you do have to drive, slow down and leave plenty of space between cars. Grocery store shelves were looking barren last night as Nashvillians stock up for the snow this weekend. At the Kroger in East Nashville, Andrew Pylan was hoping to nab some non-refrigerated items in case he loses electricity in the storm. He looked out on the produce section in a daze.
A lot of empty shelves, a lot of produce has already been taken. I mean, I don't think they're going to get a supply in either before the storm. Not much of anything left. It's just me and my wife and our dog, so we'll survive. Honestly, with chips or whatever.
Snow this weekend may be just part of the storm. Much of Middle Tennessee could be crusted in ice, and that, combined with low temperatures, could lead to power outages. Some Tennessee contractors say workers have either not shown up or left job sites out of fear of raids by ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That's from an Associated General Contractors of America survey that heard from more than 20 commercial construction firms in the state. About 1 in 10 said immigration agents had been to their sites. About half said that within the last 6 months, either they or their subcontractors lost workers trying to avoid potential encounters with immigration authorities. The surveyed contractors said that for 2026, their biggest concerns are the cost of materials, the chance of an economic slowdown, and rising labor costs. The future of Knox County's embattled Richard L. Bean Juvenile Detention Center is still up in the air. County commissioners are moving to scrap the plan for the sheriff's office to take over the facility and instead put it under the purview of juvenile court judge Tim Irwin. Tyler Whetstone is an investigative reporter with the Knox News-Sentinel and says the council discussed how to ensure checks and balances for Irwin, since he would be responsible for both sentencing the children and the facility they could be sent to.
The answer that the county is looking to go towards, a model that's shared by other juvenile detention facilities across the state, is having a board of directors, which is 7 people who are appointed, approved by the county commission, who will oversee and kind of not manage day to day. That'll be Irwin's job and the people he puts under him, but will be able to provide a layer of accountability, which didn't exist before.
Whetstone reported for Knox News that candidates for sheriff were not enthusiastic about taking over running the facility. And some community members expressed worry because of recent deaths in the jail run by the sheriff's office. Judge Irwin was on a board that had some oversight of the Bean Center for several years, including when the facility was not in compliance with DCS for breaking laws on juvenile solitary confinement, as was discovered in investigations by WPLN and ProPublica. The proposal to ban auto racing in Nashville's fairgrounds and instead build affordable housing at the site has cleared its first hurdle. The Metro Charter Revision Commission approved the proposal yesterday morning. By no means does that mean the change will occur. Only voters can change the city's charter, which currently protects auto racing as an activity at the fairgrounds. But a group wants to change that via referendum. Now that they have the green light from the commission, there will be a 30-day waiting period when appeals can be filed. If there's no appeal, then a group can begin collecting signatures. It's no small task. They'll need signatures from 10% of the county's registered voters. That's roughly 50,000 people. Only then could the proposal make it onto the ballot, where voters can make the final call. A similar proposal was introduced last year. It was also certified by the Revision Commission, but faced an appeal that led to the effort stalling out. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Dry January has become a global event when people give up alcohol for a month to keep their drinking in check. And in the U.S., it's a phenomenon that is owned by a Nashville institution. On This is Nashville with host Blake Farmer, Dr. Michael Caldwell talked about how Meharry Medical College came to trademark Dry January USA.
I've been devoted to public health and tobacco control for most of my career, and I saw in the last 10 years the evidence piling up about alcohol not being something that you should have. The misnomer that one drink of alcohol a day was good for you now, I think, has ended. And now we may be able to say one drink a day may not be so bad, but it certainly is not good. And people know that less alcohol in your life makes your life better.
Yeah. Well, you've said that alcohol's at this 1964 tobacco moment. What do you mean?
At that time, most people did not realize that tobacco was a risk factor for cancer. Similarly, a year ago, the Surgeon General put out an advisory linking alcohol to cancer. And if you look at that data, the majority of Americans went, whoa, I knew there were a lot of reasons to not drink alcohol, but I really didn't realize it caused cancer. I thought maybe I had to drink a gallon of gin a day to cause cirrhosis, but cancer, I didn't understand it. So I think this is a moment where we have great potential. We are able to provide education and get people to narrow that knowledge gap, because a lot of medical and public health people have known for a while there are 25 reasons to reduce alcohol in your life, but cancer scares people.
Yeah.
And especially people who are a little older, they think that, hey, what can I do to not give cancer a head start?
Is alcohol really as harmful as smoking when you're kind of looking at the medical evidence?
No, it is not. However, if you are really interested in trying to do everything you can about reducing your risk of certain cancers, especially breast cancer, and this is what drives me crazy is, as you know, in October, there are a few breast cancer foundations that will sell you an alcohol pink cocktail to raise money for breast cancer. I'm fine with that as long as they put a little bit of education to say, by the way, this may increase your risk of breast cancer. We are not anti-alcohol at Dry January. We're about putting a mirror up to your own relationship with alcohol. We're about making sure that you are educated about what the science is and learning that you don't have to do it alone. We have a free app. It's called Try Dry. You can get it at dryjanuaryusa.org. Meharry Medical College has always put a spotlight on the underserved or under-recognized issues. And let's face it, Blake, when you hear about opioids and fentanyl and drug trafficking, sometimes that's, you think, the only problem with drugs. But yet alcohol is used by at least 80% of all those people that use that too. It's fundamental, and not enough attention is being paid to the problem of alcohol in our society.
Yeah. Well, how did this, storied, historically black medical college in town become the official U.S. hub for Dry January?
Well, Dr. James Hildreth, our president, had a vision to start a school of global health. And since I had been the Nashville public health director and saw the impact of alcohol in our community, I had learned about Dry January, and I learned that it was an officially trademarked program out of England, and they were launching in different countries. They had not found a partner in the United States yet. So with Dr. Hildreth's support, we reached out to Alcohol Change UK, and we said we would like to be the official home for Dry January USA, and that's how it started. So a global program for a new school of global health, with a school that's now celebrating its 150th anniversary, that shines a spotlight on things in our community that need more light.
That's Dr. Michael Caldwell, the former health chief of Metro Nashville, who is now chief medical officer of Dry January USA and a professor at Meharry's School of Global Health. The full episode on drying out in a drinking town also highlights the burgeoning non-alcohol drink scene. Listen in the This Is Nashville podcast feed or watch at the WPLN YouTube page. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. A little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Stay warm and safe this weekend as the storm moves in. And as we prep for that, let's make this day a good one. And we'll catch back up next week.